Yo, what's up, guys? So, welcome to Elite Rounders How to Play Hand section. So, in this part, we actually explain how to play certain hand, and today we start with the best hand, aces. Probably everybody's favorite hand, at least I hope so. If you like money, you should like aces. I mean, that's kind of obvious. But let's start with the PowerPoint. So first thing, odds to being dealt aces 1 out of 221, probably 0.45%. So to actually get being dealt aces is very rare, and it should be like, enjoyed for sure. The best hand in poker, probably common knowledge. But let's go with the pros first. What are the good things about being dealt aces? The best hand in poker, the most valuable. The highest expected value from any hand. Again, this is a hand which should have, if you're playing correctly, it should have the highest expectation out of any hand. Amazing hand, especially short stacked, great for slow playing, no threat. Again, it doesn't have the problems like, for example, kings have problems because ace can come on flop. So there's pretty much no danger ever like flatting, unless you think it's gonna be 4, 5, 6 way. Then it might get dicey with aces, even with short stack. But in general, it's a wonderful hand to even slow play pre-flop. Cons is to lose a massive pot if overplayed. Hard to fold when faced aggression. So it's like, especially when you're a beginner, it's very easy to overplay aces in post-flop situations. You can never fold it. When I started, I could never fold aces. It's like, who folds aces, right? But there are certain situations where you just know you're beat and you have to lay down aces. It is kind of annoying, but like sometimes whatever the action went that way, that there's no way your villain is bluffing here enough for you to call with aces. You just have to lay it down. It doesn't matter. Don't get married to your hand. That's the hardest part with aces, I think. So when we do face those situations, we need to fold, and that's why I put here hard to fold when faced aggression, meaning type of aggression that you're beat, but you're still calling because you have aces. Do not make calls based on emotion. I think it's very important. Tips for playing ace-ace. So of course, any stack size, put the money in and be happy, easy. Unless we are talking about some very specific satellite tournament, aces should be always put the money in as quickly as possible. No, don't give up time in Delta. But yeah, put the money in. I would say it's a good beginner advice not to slow play actually aces, especially when we're deep stack. I feel like you get into so many troublesome spots if you just flat pre-flop. Especially for beginner players and even a bit more advanced. I hope you just 3-bet pre-flop, especially when we are talking about like deeper stacks, like 50 big blinds or something. I think the slow playing becomes more like a thing when you're like shorter stack. That's where it's most valuable, to be honest. Yeah, in the end, like, you want to play heads up pots, not in massive multi-way pots. Exactly, like when we are playing deep stack, there's a good chance that like we have 2, 3, 4, 5 players in the same pot, and that's when the value of ace goes down in a way, because like to win a pot with one pair, 5-way pot, it's actually not that easy. When it's heads up, most likely you have the best hand, right? Most of the time. So it's easier, less likely somebody will suck out. It takes a lot of skill to play multi-way pot with aces. That's what I mean. So try to avoid those, especially when you're starting out. So yeah, so just isolate, 3-bet your villains. Don't mess around with aces. Just play it like you should, right? Yeah. Yeah, beginner tip. Don't slow play deep stack. Fold aces when faced insane action in multi-way pot, you're beat. So again, this is another one. If you're playing super deep stacked, let's say 75 big blinds plus, 3, 4 guys, 2, 3 guys are going all in on flop, your ace up, most likely beat. Of course, I'm just saying general tips. We will still have to see certain hands, but in general, if there's a lot of people putting the stacks in 7, 8, 9 flop, you have aces, you need to fold it. Like if you stack off here with aces, you just don't give money most likely. So be careful. tips of playing, general tips, what I would recommend, like especially short stack, like 15, 40 big blinds, it is stack size more like, I think slow playing becomes way more valuable in a way that how the population is playing. First of all, like deep stack, I feel like people just want to play a lot of pots anyway. They don't mind the price, so just 3-bet every time they will call. So I think it's a good spot to 3-bet. But short stack, in some situations, for example, if you're in the big blind and under the gun opens, if you have no bluffs in this spot, do not 3-bet aces, because like your villain is gonna make some big folds if you're playing like solid game otherwise and you never 3-bet bluff. So he can make a really big folds if you 3-bet from big blind, like big blind versus early position open, meaning under the gun +1 or MP. If you have no bluffs in certain spots, regulars like me, we can make big folds. So be careful with that. So at least you want to mix there some bluffs too if you're gonna 3-bet. Let's say 40 big blinds deep, big blind versus early position. Yeah, so another thing is like, those are the situations where I could call, like, you know, if early position opens, I'm in the big blind and it's gonna be heads up pot especially, then I could be trapping. I think it's a good spot. Kind of like surprise your villain, because they will never put you on aces, right? You can also trap against early position open by calling from a early mid position. So if under the gun opens, under the gun plus opens, you can call from mid position, or under the gun +1 if under the gun opens. So that's kind of good situation, especially if you have aggressive players behind who like to squeeze. So target those guys who are playing very aggressive. That's a good spot to just flat. Again, if your table is very passive, you probably want to start by 3-betting, because you will just get into terrible spots with 5-6 people on the flop, and that's not going to be beneficial for you. And you will be probably again in the spots where you might be putting the money in behind. You don't want to see 5-6 way pots with aces still. Yeah, trapping becomes way more valuable when we have potential shoving stacks behind. Use it especially in the late stages. Again, same thing. If you have a lot of shoving stacks behind, flat, because they have a lot to gain by shoving. So they will shove very wide, and they see those, let's say 4 big blinds, 1 raise, 2 big blind, and 1 call, 2 big blinds. It's very attractive for somebody with 15, 20 big blinds to win a pot of, like, you know, 6 big blinds basically without showdown. It's very attractive option. So I think in these types of spots you definitely want to flat aces. Yeah, and again, aces, we don't really have to worry about too much about the flop. Again, 1 pair is very strong hand. Top pair is very strong hand with 20 big blinds. Again, basically top pair is always hand you go broke in hold'em, depending on situation. But like again, it's never a mistake basically. So again, aces, it's the nuts with 20 big blinds. So we don't mind it if we put the money in with aces. There can be maybe some spots where you could potentially fold aces 20 big blinds deep, but there are not that many. It would have to be some crazy multi-way pot, maybe three clubs on flop. You have aces with no club, right? 2 guys go all in. It's probably a spot you can fold, because it's gonna be at best like flip, right? At best, most likely you're behind. So some spots, of course, then we can always make scenario where you can fold aces, but like 20 big blinds, you shouldn't fold aces too often. Yeah. So these were just general tips for playing aces in tournaments. But yeah, I would say like the biggest thing is like not to mess around with aces. Like deeper stacks, just 3-bet, try to get the money in, and people will happily overplay their hand. So don't worry about that. Just get the money in and be happy, right? So I think that's the good thing. But yeah, keep it simple and put the money in. Don't slow play deep stacks, because people, like I said, people are willing to put money in, look at flops, fold to flops, and so on. When they have chips to spew, they will do that usually. So use that to your advantage. But yeah, thank you for watching. And if you have any your own tips for how to play aces, please add, because I can't put everything here. So it would be interesting to hear what are your tips. But yeah, thank you for watching.